Premier Tim Houston says now is the time to diversify Nova Scotia's economy, given the threats of tariffs. And while the premiers and the Prime Minister did talk today, as you saw there, about reducing internal trade barriers, Houston has other ideas too.
He says now is the time for Nova Scotia to consider greater resource extraction to bring in more revenues. In a memo to caucus, he says he's willing to reconsider some long-standing bans on extraction, such as one that applies to the lucrative fishing grounds of Georges Bank.
Would you lift the bans that you talk about in this document on things like uranium?
So you're talking about the potential that we have, the natural resource potential that we have in this province, and it is very, very significant. And you know, if we needed an example to look at how we strengthen our country through Energy East and interprovincial trade, we should also take that opportunity to strengthen our province and to make sure that our province is prepared for the future. And you know, we have a long way to go. We have significant opportunities, and I think that it's time that we realize on those opportunities so quickly.
Spring legislative session?
Possibly.
So what legislation, in order to deal with some of these things you've outlined in the memo you sent to your caucus today, what sort of legislative changes, what sort of changes would Nova Scotia have to see to allow that to go ahead?
There are a number of bans in this province. It's a long list of industries, entire sectors that we've banned. If we want to grow our economy and provide the social and fulfill our social responsibility to Nova Scotians, then we need to grow our economy and grow our industries. And we can't expect Nova Scotia to prosper when we ban industry after industry after industry. So so we need to have, you know, proper discussions about how these things can be done safely. But the reality is I hear from families every single day who are having trouble paying their bills. I hear from families every single day that are just struggling with housing, with you know, paying for their power, making decisions about what to buy instead of groceries. Like, I hear from those families every single day. And we have the potential to grow our economy and start to address those, and we can't look away from that.
I want to know which bans you're talking about, Premier, and I'm just wondering, you know, some that come to mind, Georges Bank, would you be willing to lift that moratorium on drilling there?
I think, you know, we're looking at what can be done safely, and get to a process where we remove unnecessary red tape, and there is mounds of unnecessary red tape, including outright bans of things that have just been holding back industries and sectors and holding our province back.
Georges Bank, the one you're looking at?
I will look at everything. What can be done safely? That's the lens.
There's a lot of fishermen where you're headed tonight who would not be very happy about that moratorium being lifted.
I think people have a right to be concerned that it would be done safely, and so those are questions to be answered. But they're discussions to have. I mean, right now in this province, you can't even talk about something. Just right now, just think about this right now. If somebody mentioned Georges Bank and we're nervous to have a discussion, we have to have a discussion.
For that, many people's livelihood depends on Georges being a functioning, productive area for seafood.
Sure. Fishing, farming, forestry. Our province was built on these traditional industries, and I think, you know, it will always be a part of our economy. Doing these things are just a way of life in Nova Scotia. But we have to have discussions about what we can do safely alongside that.
How much lead time will the public have on those discussions before legislation would show up in the House to reverse some of this?
There'll be lots of discussions with communities. I think my message today is kind of the exact opposite of what they're used to hearing. What Nova Scotians are used to hearing, we're not doing it. And the message has to be, if you look at the world around us today, it's a changing world, and if we can't take the opportunities that are before us to make our province more self-sufficient and our province more sustainable, and a province where we can support Nova Scotians, we have to be willing to have a discussion about all those opportunities.
Shale gas and fracking are not specifically mentioned in this. I'm wondering, is the fracking ban something that you'd like to lift?
Safe onshore exploration of gas. I mean, there's a number of bans. We've banned a number of things in this province that are being done safely in other jurisdictions and are important to the economy. And we have that potential, and the world's going to demand that we have those discussions and look at them.
One of the things that your letter seems to suggest, and correct me if I'm misinterpreting this, but you list the various challenges that the province is facing. U.S., obviously our population growth is not what it has been recently, so there are potential revenues there, potential revenue issues if there's a change in the federal government. You talk about things in the letter along the lines of controlling government costs without having to tax more. Are you trying to position things in such a way so that if we don't pursue revenue development and extraction more than we have, we are at risk of having to either have fewer services that can be delivered or face higher taxes to account for the revenue shortfalls that we could be facing in the coming years?
I'm not trying to position that. That's the reality. That's just the reality. If you look at our aging population, the cost to deliver healthcare, look at the percentage that healthcare is of our provincial budget, we have to grow the revenues to provide the services. So we rely on the federal government very heavily, and who knows what another future federal government might do.
And so what would your message be to folks who are going to hear this and they may try to position your motivation as chasing dollars at the expense of the environment?
No, this province has every potential. We have as much potential. We have more potential than most regions of this country. But we have to have the courage to act on that potential if we want to continue with the delivery of services and lower our taxes and support Nova Scotians. We have opportunities, and we need to be willing to discuss those opportunities. And they can be done safely. And where they can be done safely, they should be done.